Hi, this is Yaro Starak. The interview with Craig Ford is just about to begin, and I know you're going to love it. If you're interested in selling a product online, having a product manufactured at wholesale, or you have any idea for a product that you'd like to have created, this is definitely the interview to listen to. Craig really breaks down many aspects of getting something produced, usually in China, and then having it shipped over to your home country where you can then sell it in the real world or online or however you like. And he has so much knowledge in this subject. So definitely a great interview to listen to. That's coming up now. But before it begins, I just wanted to give you a quick heads up to tell you about a new program I have called the EJ Insider. This is an interview club, a subscription program where I give you a series of new interviews specifically designed to help people who are either bloggers who are looking to sell information products online, or any entrepreneur who's looking to get stories from experienced people who have a lot of in-depth knowledge about certain subjects online. These are interviews I haven't released anywhere else. They're usually much longer than my podcast interview because I like to go into the really nitty-gritty details of what made these people super successful. We're talking multi-million-dollar bloggers, people who are really good at direct response email marketing, and lots of great stories for entrepreneurs. So if you're looking to take this sort of interview and get more of them from me on a regular basis, premium interviews, please head to ejinsider.com/interviews. That's where you find all the details about my new program, and I hope you find it interesting. That's it for this little promo. Now here's the interview with Craig. Hello, this is Yaro Starak, and welcome to an Entrepreneur's Journey podcast interview. Today I have a guest that hopefully will be someone who can really fill some gaps that I feel are missing in the interviews I've done in the past, which is, in this case, my guest Craig Ford. Craig, thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Yaro.
Now, Craig is an import specialist. He runs myimportlabel.com.au. As a consultancy and a trainer and a teacher, but he's also been an agent doing it officially through government channels to basically help people do importing, in particular manufacturing in China. So you can get your product made in China and then sell it online or sell it wherever you live. He specializes in Australia, given the .com.au. Now, I was talking to Craig before we started this interview to try and come up with some sort of big number we can tell everyone about how much money you've made or you've helped other people make or something like that. Now, Craig has an answer to that question. I'm going to let him say that. So, Craig, what is your claim to fame?
Well, export advisory is a large part of my background. And in our last 4-year contract, we supported Queensland businesses to export more than $20 million in export sales to overseas markets. So markets all over the world, everywhere from Kazakhstan to the US and everything in between. And all kinds of products from e-learning software to clothing and fashion.
Okay, so it's both sides of the fence, isn't it? You help with importing and exporting.
That's correct, yes.
Which I assume would be quite different games.
It is. It's obviously you've got product going in, product going out. Our background is in the exporting side, and it's really about finding opportunities in overseas markets and then finding product that fits that opportunity. That's really the bread and butter of it. So importing is not that different in that we know the market better than anyone else. It's the Australian market. And so it's a matter of finding what the product is that we can fit into, whether it's your Australian market or your home market, if that's the US or wherever it is. So the principles are very, very much similar.
Okay, so we could almost say, at least as a somewhat of a goal in this call, is to talk about completing the circle, which is coming up with an idea, getting it produced overseas, importing it to wherever you are, and having it then sold online and potentially exporting it. So you're importing, manufacture the actual product, and then selling it all around the world, which would be what most people do nowadays, especially with the internet, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it all depends on the products. I mean, some products are obviously better launched in the local market, build your brand and following locally, then go offshore. Many businesses that we've worked with start with your local markets. New Zealand is a no-brainer for us. And then when they've got the resources, start strategic exporting. But really with online selling these days, you can start exporting from your first day of business. So
Okay, well, I'd love to find out more about how you gained all the insight into this world of importing and exporting. So,
sure.
as is tradition with Entrepreneur's Journey interviews, let's take a trip down memory lane here with you, Craig. Can you tell us, well, I guess the first thing, have you always been into the exporting and importing market, or was there a career of different entrepreneurial projects as a teenager and, in your 20s or whatever it is, you did those early projects?
Yeah, look, there's certainly probably my first real career role was sales for a very large-scale printing company. So we were producing nationwide magazines. The internet, this was 97. I was 19 years of age, selling about 1.2 million in sales a year. And the internet had just come out at this stage. And even then, web pages were basically glorified Yellow Pages ads at the time. But even then we could say, wow, this is going to transform the printing industry because there's instant scalability at very low cost. We were run by a multinational firm out of Singapore. They had arms in different markets, so we got to see what they were doing in different markets. Not shortly after, I did the usual Aussie thing and backpacked for a number of years, living in England, 6 months in Spain, teaching English, and also in a kibbutz in Israel. But backpacking across 40-odd countries over several years, and in that time, collecting products and sending products back and seeing what sells and what doesn't. So at the time, the internet, and eBay wasn't really a selling forum, and my brother and family would sell some products, still do, at markets, merge that onto an eBay platform now. But yeah, certainly different products over that period of time that I bring back, say, let's give this a go. Sometimes the product would completely fail, and other times it would go well purely because it's unique.
What sort of stuff were you buying? Was it just what you found interesting, or did you have a real strategy behind it?
No, not interesting. The only principle was unique. It's got to be unique. It's got to be something that can't readily be bought within your local market. So something that grabs attention. So there's certainly a novelty factor, but for long-term sustainable sales, there's got to be novelty, but as well as a real function for the product as well.
Can you remember something that actually sold well? Like, tell us a few of the, maybe you were in the kibbutz in Israel and you found some sort of, I don't know, ancient Bible lookalike product that you could mass manufacture or something.
Yeah, look, I can give you pretty good couple of examples of things that went well and not so well. Certainly the things that went well was in India. We found the margins were insane. So we found cosmetic jewelry, so basically designer jewelry, low-value jewelry, camel bone. So we would buy it off the street for $1, and we thought, wow, if we can buy this off the street for $1, what can we actually get it for from the manufacturer? So we travelled all the way out to Rajasthan, which is, not surprisingly, desert where all the camels are, and we could buy this really nice designer jewelry for, around 20 to 30 cents. That sold in Australia for, $20 to $30 a piece. So this was my pre-wedding honeymoon with my wife, that trip to India.
Right.
So instead of going to a nice beach and relaxing, I dragged her to India, and we travelled all over from Kashmir down to Kerala. And it's bought leather jackets, leather shoes, all kinds of stuff. But that cosmetic jewelry, or the camel bone jewelry, went really well. It was a short-term product. I mean, you hit the market, it went really well for 6 to 9 months, and then the market catches up with you. Prices grind down a bit. But it was a great example of finding a niche product, fantastic margins, and essentially taking a low-cost product and introducing it to a high-cost market.
And how were you selling? Because you're traveling, and I can't imagine you can just grab a suitcase and fill it full of jewelry. Did you order from the manufacturer and have it shipped back to family in Australia, and then they'd sell it locally?
Actually, you can get a surprising amount of jewelry back. So yeah, literally a bit of both. So you'd stuff your suitcase with as much as that is feasible. So of course, we can avoid some GST and import duty in Australia if you're under $1,000 in value for the products. So you can get those samples back, and we did that, and we tested the market, and the market feedback was fantastic, and that gave us the confidence to say, hey, we know this stuff can sell, we know what we can get for it. Let's get some big parcels, and let's start moving this stuff. Because essentially, it was the best thing about it as well. It was also small. So it was very easy to ship regularly. You didn't have to, you don't none of this 20-foot container stuff. You can get regular small shipments, and it was cost effective.
I have this image of you coming into the Australian airport wearing all this jewellery on your arms and legs and neck just to try and get it in, saying, "Oh no, just my jewellery."
And my wife as well.
Yeah. So when you said you test the market, what vehicle? You said it was eBay eventually, but how did you find out if people wanted to buy this stuff?
Friends and family and markets. So literally going out there and saying, do you like it? What would you pay for it? Have you seen it before? Yeah, that was the first thing. Is it available? Is this stuff around? Because essentially when you're overseas, you do see lots of products that are great. And then you come back here and, the numbers might not stack up. There might not be a market. It might be that novelty factor where it's great, but people won't necessarily buy it continuously. So you do have to get that human feedback to really confirm your decisions. So it's really, you don't want to be making guesses at that stage when you're making a big order. You want to make sure that, one, there's a market, and two, people will pay a good dollar for it.
Okay. So as a very basic introduction to importing, you could head off to India or Bali or whatever, find things that you think are unique and might sell, buy a sample that you could sell, go home, show it to your friends and your family, and maybe hit some of the local flea markets and the more upscale markets you might have, see if they sell there, and if it does, then what would you do next?
Well, you'd take that feedback and you would look at the products that are moving well and obviously discard the ones that you don't get good feedback on. So you're informing those decisions in your product development. Then go back to the manufacturer and start ordering in larger volumes. But I think apart from those channels, really, and jewellery is a good example, and baby products is another good example, where there are tons of independent retailers in Australia that are able to take on products from small guys. So they're also a fantastic sales channel for being able to get a bit of scale, and being able to knock on the door of an independent retailer and say, hey, I can supply you, so many boxes of this product. If you think you can sell it, these are the sort of margins you can make. How about it? So that's a model that some of my clients have used very successfully.
Okay, well, can you take us through, even with your own story? So you're traveling as a young, early 20s something with your fiancé, and you're buying product, and then are you thinking this is going to be my career, or are you hoping to get rich from a big hit from a product that just sells like hotcakes, like Crocs or something like that? Or take us forward.
Yeah, I mean, we have plenty of mistakes you make along the way. So I know that there's, in doing this, you're paying more for freight than you should. You're making mistakes and customers are giving you a call, and stuff has to go through quarantine, and that costs money. So you're making mistakes along the way. So I finished travelling, and that was 3 odd years. I got back to Australia and said, right, let's do this properly. So I went and did an undergraduate degree in international business, and that was also to fix my Spanish, which I spoke really well, but my grammar was appalling apparently. So that was to basically get the theory and to get the knowledge behind what I was doing. Let's do it correctly. I did that under an international business degree, and then my career took a little bit of a turn, where I'd say I did a big picture apprenticeship, doing export development, but in a government role, which is completely saps the entrepreneurial spirit out of you, I can tell you now. But the role itself was fantastic apprenticeship, because it was very big picture, and essentially I was in a team, a very small team, and we would look after the South Asia region, because I was experienced with India by then, and we would look at industries in India and look where there are Australian companies with high technology and services that could export to those sectors. So we had a lot of big wins with the mining sector in India. We would contact large Indian mining companies for coal and minerals, and they're generally producing at very low rates, low levels of technology, very low levels of safety as well. And we would facilitate them. We would bring those mine owners, decision makers, to Australia, have a look at our mines, and we'd introduce them to the technologies in Australia. So that was a very big picture role. We're dealing with big mining companies and very big mining technology providers in Australia, and is essentially a matchmaking role where you're finding the opportunity and grabbing that technology or service that is locally produced and being able to introduce that to the market. So that was a fantastic apprenticeship for literally looking at markets, finding opportunities, and for supplies for products that we already had.
How does that even start, though, Craig? I find that mind-boggling. Does someone from Australia just go to India and start walking around, or is there already established lines of communication? Because to know that the Indian mines are not safe and they're using old technology, how do you even learn that and then reach the decision makers at those companies to convince them to buy Australian mining product?
Yeah, no, that's a fair question. I mean, there are already established lines of communication through business and through government channels. And we would obviously go to market, but we would also employ a local contractor, so an expert that already supplied to the industry in India, a local Indian company, and we would employ them to say, right, engage with this mining company. So it was Tata Steel, and they've got a whole lot of coal mining operations, and assess this largest mine that they've got and tell us about the technology they're using. Are they using an ERP system, or are they just sort of got a whiteboard? Are they planning it on a whiteboard? Now, tell us about the safety levels are they using. They've got underground mines. Are they using any sort of gas monitoring systems, or are they just doing sending a canary into the coal mine? So it's literally we would get that feedback and say, right, we can see that these guys are employing a ridiculous amount of people. They're producing a very low volume of coal out of the market. So, we would get quite a large amount of funding, and then we'd start putting on programs to send Queensland or Australian companies over there and to get into the face of the decision makers. Okay. So it's really big picture stuff. It's and it was very enterprising in being able to look at a brand new sector and say, right, how can we fit into this? And another example of that project was the aviation sector over in India. So you have traditionally the aviation sector was controlled by a couple of big airlines, and it was completely deregulated. So all of a sudden you've got all of these brand new airlines popping up overnight, and they don't have enough pilots or ground crew. So that was another opportunity whereby we engaged with all of these new Indian aviation companies and said, right, we've got these world-class facilities for training pilots and aircrew in Australia.
So this is a big difference from selling jewellery at a market that you found in India in the desert. Your career's obviously taken a turn. What were you enjoying in that process, and what were you finding that you were learning that obviously would eventually lead to you doing your own business with importing and exporting again?
Yeah, look, I mean, I guess the principles, as I said, were the same in that you're essentially taking the model of a niche product or a low-cost product and introducing it into a market where there's a lot of demand, or a high-cost market where there's big leverage on sales margins. So even though those two projects sound completely different, the principles are quite similar. What I didn't like about it, of course, is I wasn't in control. I wasn't the salesperson. It's very hard not being the salesperson.
Yeah, and you were on salary, I presume, too, right?
Yeah, salary. And as I said, it's very draining on the entrepreneurial spirit. So I still had a couple of little things I was running on the side, still importing the occasional product, but obviously that was my main role at the time. So, look, from there, I mean, I went and worked for, it was frustrating, so I went and worked for a mining technology company. And that was selling software into mine sites all over the world. So those guys were already exporting their software to the US, to Canada, and to other South Africa, and all across Australia they were selling it. And so I helped them to introduce their software to 3 more mine sites. So that was got my entrepreneurial spirit back.
So after that, what led you to, I guess, deciding, well, I mean, it's a big leap to go from, obviously you had 2 secure jobs, right? One was with the agency, the Australian government, and then with mining software, to then do your own thing. Did you have concerns about, traditional things? Like, by then you're obviously married and you might have a mortgage, I don't know, but there's certainly more dependencies than when you were a 20-year-old kid backpacking around the world. It's easier to sort of think that, I can play around with product and see what works and doesn't work because I've got enough time to fail. So as you got older, did that be was that something you were afraid of? Especially because now, what is it that you do right now? You are an independent business owner.
Yeah, that's right. I run my own business, and we provide essentially an online learning and software platform for startups and importers. So they hop on, they create an account and start learning how to import, launch product to market, and they have the software and the tools to do the job as well. So
how did you create that? And there was some overlap here with the job that you had and creating this business, right?
Yeah, well, there's a big gap here, and so I left after the mining technology company. I went to this is a role that myself and my wife have shared for 6 years, and this was another role. It was largely a consultant role, and this is called Trade Start, whereby we have and still have an exclusive contract in the Brisbane region to provide export advisory services to small business. So this is a very much sought after contract. We've won it over a couple of periods now. The last period we beat professional management companies like BDO Kendall's Australian Institute of Export to secure the role. And that role is specifically working with, over a 4-year period, we'll probably come into contact with over 600 companies. We'll work very closely with about 150. And when I say companies, I mean largely small business, startups and small business. And we're advising them what market you should go into. We're advising them how to get into the market. Should they export online? Should they engage sales agents or distributors? Or should they make it, set up an office? And then also how to change your product for the market. So not only how to meet compliance requirements and standards, but also, how to adapt the product to the customer tastes for that market. So that's
similar, sounds like, to your own kind of business with myimportlabel.com.au. Can you maybe explain the difference between the Trade Smart, was it?
Trade Start, yeah.
Trade Start, and what My Import Label does?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, this really closes the gap in that we're working very closely with clothing, fashion, software companies, and we're able to get them to a very high level of capability in the export side. We could see that a lot of the product, a great majority of product, was coming in from China and other markets. So we couldn't help them on the import side. So really, it was really obvious to us that there's this huge knowledge gap in importing. There's lots of knowledge out there for exporting because there's lots of programs to support bringing, obviously, export revenue into the country, but there's no programs to support people who wants to import product because obviously that money's going out of the country. So it was obvious to us that the companies that we were working with had very, very mediocre import supply chains. So that just slapped us in the face and said, wow, this is a real opportunity where people want to know about importing, but they want the services that go around it as well. There's a lot more to just grabbing a product and putting it on a plane and bringing it back. You've got to know whether it's worthwhile to start, and then you've got to know how to best take it to market to be able to sell it and get the best dollar for it. So that was largely the tool that made us look at My Import Label and start that.
So when you say they have mediocre importing systems and knowledge, can you give us some practical examples? Like, where are companies going so wrong with their importing?
Oh wow, I could tell you a million stories, and we still get calls every week from people that are using online B2B suppliers directories that are based in China and other markets and are getting not necessarily ripped off by fraudulent guys. That's probably a bit rarer these days, but inexperienced importers get taken off by genuine suppliers. And one example is, this is a Trade Start client, and she would just use the manufacturer's freight forwarder instead of using her own freight forwarder. They would underwrite the value of the order. So when she went and exported those goods back to another market, instead of claiming back all of the duty and GST she paid, she couldn't claim any of that back. So she lost several $1,000s in duty and GST paid. That's just one small little mistake made of many that.
Can you give us a few more? I'm thinking of someone listening into this who might be thinking about importing, and I wouldn't mind doing a little bit of an example, but just for the mistake side of the fence, where do people go wrong besides that?
Oh, look, I think before they even start is just not finding out what your actual costs are before you take product to market.
Okay, well, let's do this properly then.
Mm-hmm.
I'm listening to this interview, Craig, and I run a website, or I'm thinking of starting up a website. I've got some traffic, and I'm thinking, I want to have this great idea for, even like mutual friends we have, a couple of girls who are looking to sell in the model marketplace, and they're thinking of buying and importing products that working and aspiring models would need to use, from makeup to, might be... I don't even know. I'm not a model, but let's go with makeup. And, that's something that there's all kinds of different layers to it. There's so many different types of makeup, and no doubt there's many things you could import. But, geez, I'm sitting in America or Australia or England or, somewhere, and I've never even imported or bought wholesale or manufactured. I've got an idea for something that I could draw with pencil on a piece of paper, say, it should look like this and have these sort of ingredients. What would you do next?
Yeah, look, I mean, the first thing, I guess, is to set small targets and to try and get a quick return on revenue. So let's look at makeup, for instance. The first thing I would say to them is, let's not go and make a brand new compound, a brand new product, and develop that with your own label and bring it back to Australia and sell it, because that's going to take a very long time to bring to market and a lot of cost and sampling and, meeting regulations as well. The easiest thing they could do to start, to just see if it works, let's grab some makeup that's already been produced. You can hop on Alibaba and, have a look at something that's already been produced, stock standard, bring it back and let's get some feedback on it. So we'd say to those girls, look, throw it onto your blog and get some feedback from your customers. Throw it on Facebook and get some feedback about whether it'll sell. And then, obviously, we've got our program will run you through different product checks you can make. So you want to know that the compounds are legal. That there's not lead in the makeup, for instance, that's obviously harmful to the person. So you want to make sure that the product actually can be safely imported. You want to make sure that it can be legally imported, and you want to make sure that there's actually a dollar in it as well. But importantly, and this is an area that many, many importers will come unstuck, is they will launch into a big import project, what we'd call an OEM or a custom job, without understanding how much work's involved in bringing it to market. So the first step would be, let's bring a really simple product back and let's achieve that first step. Make some quick sales and get some feedback. And then we can say, all right, well, look, we've sold, a few hundred cases of this makeup. It's gone pretty well. We want to make some changes. First thing the girls might want to do is put their own label on it. I mean, that's obvious. When you put your own label on a product, you can create a premium brand, and with that premium brand you can ask for more money for the product. You can create a fantastic social media strategy, and you can also corner the online market as well. So that's one area whereby they can make a small adjustment to that product and greatly improve the marketability and their sales margins.
So how hard is it to go to, was it Alibaba? For people who don't know, what is that?
So Alibaba.com is the largest business-to-business supplier directory in the world. It is an absolute phenomenon. So Alibaba has largely shaken up the sourcing industry in the last 3 or 4 years, whereby 3 or 4 years ago you would have gone to a sourcing company. They would have charged you between 3 and 12 grand to go and find a manufacturer in China, and they would help you bring the product back to your market. And that's about it. That's what they do. They facilitate introduction to manufacturers. So Alibaba they've got phenomenal database of manufacturers and suppliers, mostly in China, but also in other markets. So really, you don't need to pay that big money anymore to go and research and to find suppliers in overseas markets, because it's all online and it's all for free.
So I could search Alibaba and I type in foundation or something like that for makeup, and then I'd have all these suppliers there who could provide this for me. Mm-hmm. I'd pick one. Mm-hmm. How do I get my own label made for it?
Well, this is the start of the negotiation. From the very first contact, when you ask the questions, the negotiation's already started, and this is where people need a little bit more help and support. So really, it's the part of the manufacturing process is, it's obviously more complex to print or emboss your label onto that product, and you would arrange that. You'd negotiate it as part of the manufacturing process. So generally, you'd be asking them, can we white label this? That would be the first question. Can I put my own brand on it? Or you'd say ODM, which is Original Design Manufacturer. So that would be the question. Generally, it's very common request, and the price will be adjusted, and perhaps the minimum order quantity or the MOQ will be adjusted as well.
Okay, and then how do you know if you're going to make a minimum order just to test whether your audience wants it? What's like you're not getting ripped off in terms of what you're paying for? Like you might have in your head, okay, the makeup's going to be positioned at $25 each a unit, but the wholesale rate might be $4 or $1 or $10. How do you know what's fair? Is it a case of just looking at as many different suppliers and asking them their rates?
Yeah, and so I guess to answer it simply, there is no magic bullet. There's probably, we work through probably 12 to 15 steps in that negotiating, importing, and testing phase and sampling phase by which you run through the steps that mitigate these risks, i.e. you want to know, number one, are these guys fraudulent? And that's pretty easy to find out these days. As I said, the incidence of fraud is uncomfortably high, but it is certainly cutting down a lot. Secondly, you want to know that the product can be imported. And you also want to know that it can be sold and it is what it is, so the compounds are quality. So that's where you get samples back. So you wouldn't go and make an order for a start. You would order samples. And we certainly suggest to clients to go and order samples from at least 3 suppliers, and then you test them. And when I say test, I mean quality testing. So you obviously, if it's clothing, which we do a lot of, you're stretching it, you're testing that fabric, you're leaving it on the clothesline for days, you're throwing it in the dryer wet, you're testing shrinkage, you're testing the seams. So that's one example. Something like makeup, however, I would be strongly encouraging the girls to get a lab test. Test that compound in there. Let's test the breakdown of the different compounds to make sure they are what they say they are. Mm-hmm. And, once upon a time, again, that was difficult. You've got guys in China. You can even get that done in China with international companies. They have offices in every single city in China, or every major city, sorry. And that test can, it's $250 to $300. So it's a no-brainer to get that done. And the third part of the testing is, of course, the market testing, which we've alluded to before. So the girls would put that makeup online and say, wow, here's some fantastic foundation that we've got. It's completely different. What is it about it that you like? What don't you like about it? We're giving some samples away. And they would get that feedback that would help them decide, wow, how do we develop this product? Or how much of this product do we actually need?
Okay. I remember several years ago, there was a bit of a craze in dropshipping.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Which sounded great. You just, go to something like Alibaba, instead of though needing to buy at wholesale and ship a bunch of product and, stick it in your garage and have it sent out maybe by yourself if you're just getting started by trekking on down to Australia Post or something, or UPS if you're in the States or whatever, and sending product out like that. But with dropshipping, you just fill out a form and they send it straight to your customer. Is that something that's still done, or?
It is. It's marketed, but we actively discourage all clients from doing it. And let me qualify that by saying, in the early stages, it's just not feasible. And look, I've got a blog on this that is very well read. And we talk about the reasons why drop shipping is unsustainable. Number one is that there's no accountability. The person that's essentially the importer is just finding a customer, and they're trusting the manufacturer to send the product that is up to spec to that customer with no faults. So that raises a whole lot of issues, certainly under Australian laws, where if the product is not up to scratch, then the dropshipper is responsible for getting the situation right. So reimbursing the customer or sending them another product. You also have to trust the manufacturer, obviously, to get the product up to spec. And certainly there are some payment providers that have withdrawn support for dropshipping models in some degrees, because people would essentially buy the goods on credit and then try to sell them and recoup the money instead of investing money into it. So it gets back to the accountability, and if there's no accountability, then the model falls over. So dropshipping was a very utopian idea, but it really didn't work. And let me qualify that by saying, once you're in a position that you have established good working relationships with a manufacturer, and let's look at something like furniture, because the other issue with dropshipping is it's not scalable. You're essentially ordering one or two products at a time and sending it over. Chinese manufacturers want to talk about thousands of products at a time. So it doesn't work in that regard as well. However, if you've got something big ticket item like furniture, you've got a track record with that manufacturer, and they obviously produce that product one at a time. That is a circumstance whereby you can market that product. You can have it custom made. In Indonesia is also very popular for furniture. And then you can have that product made and then sent straight to the customer. Obviously, you'd still get quality inspections done in the market, but that is an exception whereby the principles of dropshipping can be used effectively.
Okay. Can you tell us a bit more about what you actually end up doing with My Import labels? You've touched upon, I can see, some areas where, I'd be going in blind for sure. I wouldn't be thinking about a lot of these things you're talking about, like getting lab tested, and I guess that makes sense, but you don't sort of think about these things. And even if I wanted to sell something from an entrepreneur's journey, like let's say I decide I want to have a custom business card holder made with the EJ logo on it or something like that, and even just to give a few away to my paying members and things like that. And I wanted to go to Alibaba and look it up and then find a way to get it engraved with my logo and things like that. Can you sort of give us a typical case study, even a real case study, if you have a client you can mention on an interview like this?
Sure.
And where they come from when they first approach you, and where do you take them to? Like where do you lead them through your coaching and your teaching?
Yeah, so look, we started My Import Label as a full service agency. So literally a client would come to us and say, I want to set up a clothing label. I want to set up this product label. So we would do the sourcing for them. Literally, I was in China very regularly, in the factories, meeting with the factory owners, bringing the product back, launching the online stores, creating their brand, and essentially handing it over to the client. That was very popular. In fact, it was too popular for us because we could only handle so many clients because it was a very labor-intensive business. As a result of doing that, it was pretty obvious to us that there was a few points. Number one, that there are many, many more people who didn't have the budget. Startups have a modest budget, have finite resources. So we would get a lot of interest from people who wanted to have a go, but couldn't commit to that sort of extent. We were charging $10,000 to $15,000. So we said, right, well, we need to make this knowledge and these processes available to people so that they can just give their product idea a go without sacrificing the mortgage or even sacrificing their lunch money. So we switched the business to an online platform. We've automated, instead of spending realms of time coaching people, we put it into an online learning platform so people can access these processes and that information for how to assess and qualify and import the product. They can do that online much more readily for a fraction of that cost that we used to charge. So let me give you one example. This is a really good product. So it's called My Pet Tracker. It's mypettracker.com.au. And this is a client of mine called Monique. She's way over the other side of Australia in Perth. And she came to me and said, look, I've got an idea for a product. It's a GPS tracker for dogs. So it's something that you would fix to a dog's collar and you could find where your dog is. And so I thought, okay, look, cool. It's a very cool product, and I could relate to it because we've got a dog that we ended up spending $8,000 on after he got hit by a car. So I thought, wow, I can definitely see the demand for it. And so, look, we found the manufacturers in China. There was a whole lot of technical issues that we had to work through as well with the client. I've obviously, with my background working with technology products, I was very familiar with GPS and mobile devices and what the ins and outs of those were. We got quite a few different samples of the product for the client, tested them out. Of course, my dog still wanders about, even though he's only got 3 legs. And we road tested it, and just to see what's this product, what's its limitations, is it that effective, can it solve the problem, can I find my dog when he goes missing? Because, and other than that, council fines are also quite expensive, not to mention vet fees. So certainly we were overwhelmed by the demand. We did the Facebook, the blog commenting and getting feedback, and people were saying to us, yes, we really need this, because people spend a lot of money on their dogs. They love their dogs, a part of the family.
How did you ask people that question? Did you just write a little post on Facebook saying, we're thinking of making a GPS tracker for your pet? Would you be interested in buying one?
Well, there is a phenomenal amount of traffic for lost cats and dogs online. So people looking at directories saying, where's my dog? My dog's gone missing, and the associated search phrases. So we would tap into some of that traffic and say, look, we've got this product. What do you think about it? What would you be prepared to pay for it? That gave us the confidence to say, wow, this is a really viable product, and there is a ready market ready to go, and it's unmet demand at the moment. We went through a very lengthy process of making sure it complied with the Australian Communications and Media Authority. So what we call an ATIC compliance. That cost the client quite a bit of money, and I can tell you there's no way she would have had the confidence to go through with that if she didn't know that the product was viable and profitable. So I think it probably cost her, $6,000 to $8,000 to get that compliance. So it was a significant barrier, and probably a barrier that most people would have stopped at. But with that knowledge, we knew that she was onto a winner. So fast forward a couple of months, we've got the compliance. We negotiated her ODM, so we've created our own brand, put our own label under that product, and we're now blitz launching the market across Australia. And she's getting fantastic feedback. Facebook friends, she's getting I think a couple hundred new Facebook friends a week through marketing and also through advertising, and purely going after dog and cat owners that are worried about their dogs and cats going missing.
I can imagine that's quite a unique piece of technology. I'd be daunted trying to find that at wholesale and being confident that it worked, and getting it small enough to fit on an animal, all those little niggling things. There's got to be more to it than just searching through Alibaba and finding little GPS boxes and thinking, okay, I can attach that to a pet, right? Because there's some design required in something like this and some technology required. So is that hard?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, this was, I will make the difference here. This was an ODM product. It wasn't actually a custom developed product. So it was already available on Alibaba. But we had to make sure it complied and fit the Australian market. We didn't guess on the manufacturer, so I was with the client and a translator, and we went to the manufacturer's premises. We saw the product being made. We tested it there. We viewed their certifications for the US and the EU market. So, and we saw the manufacturing assembly. We saw how the product came together. So there's no way we would have gone ahead with that without seeing that product being made and becoming familiar with the people that are making it and seeing how genuine it was.
Now, when you say you saw it, you went to China and saw all that.
Saw it, yeah. So in China.
Right.
Yep.
I can see why the research phase is important, because we're talking about a compliance fee. The traveling to China part costs obviously a few $1,000s as well. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of upfront potential cost here, so you do want to know there's actually demand for something. Especially, I mean, that's the thing with physical goods. You always have a cost up front. So I think by the sounds of it, Craig, you are a big fan of a pre-research phase before doing anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a sort of project where if you wanted to just jump into it and not do that background research, she would have done the compliance, done the MOQ, or minimum order quantity order, and easily coughed up 10 to 15 grand. That stage one phase of getting that feedback, literally, I mean, she did that for less than $1,000. So right now, I mean, our program's less than 500. You can hop on Alibaba and order some samples and ship them to Australia for less than 500. So really, you've got that confidence to give it a go before you're going and invest your life savings into it.
How important do you think it is to go to China for these sorts of things? It sounds like a lot of people do that, and I like the idea of seeing the product I'm potentially going to sell to people being made for confidence. But then again, I also feel a sense of, I don't know whether I'm being swindled and what I'm looking at when I get to China, and there's a language barrier. Like, how do you find all that?
Look, it's very tempting to just stay at your desktop and to order from your desktop. But you've got to remember that, I mean, China and India and many developed markets are relationship-based markets. They don't really rely on the rule of law like Australia and the US do, where things go wrong, well, we can chat to a lawyer and we can sort it out this way. You're dealing with the Wild West in many ways in China. You don't have the rule of law to fall back onto. So you can put a whole lot of risk mitigation steps in place to make sure that the supplier isn't a swindler. But one thing I repeatedly emphasize to clients is, look, on a long-term basis, it's really not that expensive to go to China. From Brisbane, you can fly direct to Guangzhou for $900 return. You can get there in a day, 8 hours each way. And to go and meet that factory owner and to meet the staff that are producing it is invaluable. It's by far and away the best risk management strategy you can have. Because once you get to the factory, all of the facts that are posted online, some of them you realise are just not correct. You find out things from the factory that you just wouldn't otherwise find out. Let me give you an example. I mean, we were sourcing very high quality women's fashion leather shoes. So we went to a very good manufacturer, everything stacked up. All the details, all their credentials and everything, but on their manufacturing floor, they were producing very cheap kids' booties, that you'd probably see in an apartment store for about $10. And they were trying to convince us that they could produce very boutique, this high-level women's leather shoes. And I wasn't convinced because the manufacturing process was large-scale, low quality, when they wanted to produce for us very low scale, very high quality craftsmanship and materials. And as we were leaving the premises as well, my translator said to me, look at all these signs on the wall here, and they are having trouble getting staff because they're out of the major manufacturing region. So while they were very, very good supplier, there was a few alarm bells ringing to us to say, right, I don't know if they're as good in producing this product as they say they are, and I've got a question mark over their skills if they're having this much trouble getting consistent quality staff that can produce these goods. So, I mean, on the other side of that, we've been to other factories where we've met with a factory owner, and as soon as we've had lunch with a factory owner, wow, we come back to Australia and as soon as we make a request, his staff just jump all over us. They could not be more helpful. So that personal connection with the factory owner is just essential. I cannot rate it highly enough. So, look, certainly in the early stages, you don't need to go to China and that expense and that hassle. Certainly in that stage one, the sampling phase, no need whatsoever. As soon as you're looking to engage into a commercial order, really the expense of that $900 and a few days in China is money well spent, a wise investment in your long-term business.
And it's obviously easy to get a translator to come with you, that sort of thing?
Yeah, look, we've got girls on the ground in China, and that's exactly what they do. And it's certainly easy to get a translator. You do want a translator. You would prefer to be hearing the words from the translator that you've engaged. But look, with that said, I mean, China's a fantastic place. It's very friendly, but it's not that easy to get around if you don't speak some of the language.
Now, we mentioned China a lot. That's not the only place. You said India as well. Do you have certain opinions on where to go? Like, are other countries better for certain type of product?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, this is a really good point because, look, the east coast of China in particular is becoming more expensive. The cost of living there is increasing. And certainly we've noticed with clothing in the Guangzhou, southern China region is getting quite expensive. So they're becoming more expensive than Vietnam. Vietnam is actually a very good bargain place. And certainly your large, your Walmarts of the world are getting a lot manufactured in Bangladesh and to a lesser extent India as well. So the markets is a really important choice. They've got to specialise in that product and they've got to have manufacturing expertise. And you've got to learn about that as well. So we provide a bit of information about how you can learn which markets are better for which products. But also, I mean, there are a bunch of other factors that go into consideration as well. We've got several modules on how to select a manufacturer. Certainly the attraction for China, though, is they have so much industry across so many different products that is already exporting. And another very important rule of thumb I'll bring up here is if you're starting up importing, you want to deal with a manufacturer that's already exporting to either the US, the EU, or Australia, because the quality that we demand in our markets are very high. So you don't want to deal with a manufacturer that's, only dealing in the Chinese domestic market. Generally speaking, they do accept a lower quality product and materials. So it's very important to ask that question: where are you already exporting to?
But there aren't any rules of thumb in terms of, get clothing from here and get electronics from here or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Different. There are different clusters of regions in China that produce different products. Shenzhen, for instance, is infamous for their electronics. Guangzhou is infamous for their clothing, and Dongguan for shoes. I mean, Vietnam is a major manufacturer and exporter of clothing as well to the US, but not so much to Australia. India has a fantastic textiles industry, very diverse. Pakistan, for instance, is really great with leather.
I guess it's the sort of inside knowledge you pick up as you're working, right?
Absolutely.
Now, I have to ask this question because I know some people will be thinking this, and my readers have thought this before when it comes to doing anything outsourcing, is the issue of exploitation. Now, when you tour a factory, obviously, you probably have better chance to see this, but are there ever concerns of, underpaid labor or standards of safety or, quality of work that you should look out for any signs of even, child labor to that degree when you start doing something like this?
Yeah, look, I mean, there's two important points that you raised there, so I'll address these separately. I mean, the first one is child labor and that social exploitation. And the second one is the quality issue. That child exploitation, I mean, of course we know it exists, and it's been a PR disaster for a few big companies, the Nikes and other places. Personally, I've never found any child labour in Chinese factories, and there are quality control firms that we use, and they do what we call social responsibility audits, and they will check environmental concerns, they'll check social welfare concerns as well. So you can actually get a social audit of the factory that you're dealing with. On the flip side, you can actually then use that as a selling point as well. So you can actually use that as a very strong selling point and say, we've had our factories, they all comply, they're all environmentally friendly, and they all pay their staff well and equitable as well. So you can turn that into a positive. It doesn't, and look, the cost of an audit is not that significant that you wouldn't bother if that's a concern to you. Although I will say it's, as I said, I have never found child labour in Chinese factories ever. The second point you make, though, is about quality. And this is another really important rule of thumb that I will say when you are selecting and deciding between manufacturers. If you get a sample that is well made, so good craftsmanship, but it is poor materials, now that's quite easy to actually negotiate the better quality materials. So it's quite easy. I mean, we provide a lot of steps to do this, but to be able to go back to the manufacturer and say, look, this jeans are a good example. This quality of denim is actually too thin. It's poor. but the craftsmanship is really, and the style is really good. We like it. That's a good reason to stay with that manufacturer if they agree and if they can prove to you that they can get the required quality denim. On the flip side of that, if you get a pair of jeans that are really quality, you know, the fabric is good, but the craftsmanship is poor, it is very difficult to get that manufacturer to increase that quality of their craftsmanship, because that strikes at the heart of their business. They need to improve the skills of their workers, and they might not even have the quality processes or even the equipment to be able to produce to that required standard. So this is a really important rule of thumb: is that quality of craftsmanship is not up to scratch, you should be seriously considering moving to another manufacturer.
Okay. Craig, what a lot of information you provided here. That's a ton. Clearly you know your subject really well. I'm hoping everyone listening here, if they're sort of thinking, I've got a blog, I've got an existing audience, I'd actually like to test some physical product, that they have at least a pathway now, certainly Alibaba as a starting point. Your site, myimportlabel.com.au, what do you provide there in terms of both structured courses and free information and coaching or anything like that?
Yeah, so look, we've got an online learning platform with software. So essentially you can log onto our website and create a free account. We've got a 6-week program. It goes over 6 steps. And within 6 weeks, you can run through, we run through about 15 learning modules per week. So there's more than 70 learning modules over the 6 weeks. And within that 6 weeks, we compact everything we know into that program. So before you go and launch into a product and go and invest, we want people to be up to speed and to make, essentially become an expert importer in 6 weeks. That's what we provide. We've got the tools to make the task easier, so templates and checklists, criteria for how we assess a manufacturer. We've got online store software with a blog as well, so that's click to launch, and you've got your own online store, which you can certainly start building and start optimizing while you're at the sampling stage. So it's a very low-cost resource that you can hop onto, and with a pay-as-you-go subscription model with no lock-ins. So it's designed to get people at the startup stage to be able to test their idea without committing vast sums of money or resources.
Which sounds fantastic. What do you personally do nowadays, Craig? Like, what's a working week like for you?
A working week is I run monthly webinars, of course. So part of our membership is that we provide webinars on different topics with Q&A. So that takes up a bit of time, as well as I provide coaching as well. So, of course, people do the program and they may have a specific circumstance or needs for their product or business requirements. They engage us to do different coaching as well. So we've got a few different coaches that we provide based on the specific requirement, whether it's online. My wife, of course, her expertise is exporting of fashion and clothing, so she's in demand. And then, of course, I cover large parts of the business as well. So it's largely dealing with our paid members, people that have come onto our program, and helping them to troubleshoot issues and just overcome those challenges of the startup phase that seem to bog people down.
And I'm assuming like this is what still floats your boat, sort of thing, in terms of like, do you have any big plans for any new businesses? Because I have to admit, it must be tempting, knowing so much about importing and exporting, to go and start like a business every time you see a cool product.
It is very tempting. I mean, and there's a couple of parts to this. One is that I have very strict confidentiality agreements with clients. So we do have plenty of secret squirrels that come to us and get us to sign non-disclosure agreements. And look, I don't have a business if we can't do that. So that's important. But I do have other clients who come to me and say, look, I need a professional partner on board. And we are open to engaging with people on an equity basis and looking at doing the task for them and bringing product to market, where they basically want to focus on the selling of the product and they want us to get the product for them. So that's also an area that I'm engaged with. And I have a mate down the Gold Coast who's got a fantastic technology product that we're doing that at the moment, which is a broadcast mobile marketing software.
Any other cool products that you got your fingers in? It must be cool, kind of as an entrepreneur. You could sort of have many different products selling because you're just the partner for the consulting with the importing and exporting. But you could be selling jewelry and underwear and leather shoes. Do you have any projects like that?
There's always new technology products. If you're looking for a hot area, small consumer niche technologies like the GPS tracker for dogs, that was a fantastic example. And there are, the thing with technology, it gets cheaper and it becomes more complex as it evolves. And as it becomes cheaper, it opens up all of these new markets. So technology is a great area to look for new emerging products. That pet tracker, for instance, that's quite that software's that technology's been around for years, GPS as well as the SMS, but because it's become so much cheaper, it's opened up this new market. Once upon a time, you wouldn't have thought to put a mobile phone type device on a dog's collar because it just wasn't worthwhile, but now it is.
All right, we'll wrap it up, Craig. Any last words of wisdom or advice? It sounds like your journey's been very much tied to importing and exporting, like through entire life, working life so far. So, clearly you're meant to do this. Any passing words?
I'd say to people, don't try to do everything yourself, because if you try and master everything, you'll never get started. And you can start up lean and test that product idea out without, spending the Christmas money. You can give that product idea a go before you go and commit to a large commercial order. That would be my advice.
Okay, fantastic. So, Craig Ford from myimportlabel.com.au. Thank you, Craig, for spending this hour with me and sharing all this fantastic information. I have to admit, I'm going to go check out Alibaba now just out of curiosity to see what sort of stuff I could start selling online. I have a feeling there's a bunch of people who sell on eBay who must love Alibaba, because that would be a great combination there. Your source of goods and your distribution channel for marketing, hence probably a lot of competition too. But let's not go down that discussion right now, Craig. We've already done an hour, so thank you for joining me. And for everyone else listening in, you know where to go if you want more interviews like this. You can head to entrepreneurs-journey.com or Google my name, which is Yaro, Yaro, and you'll find all my podcasts there. There's over 80 of them with fantastic and very experienced entrepreneurs like Craig who share their stories. So thanks everyone for listening, and I'll catch you again very soon.
Thanks, Yaro. Okay.
I hope you enjoyed that interview with Craig. I think it's one of the best ones we've had on the Entrepreneur's Journey podcast. A reminder again, if you are looking to join my EJ Insiders Club, if you love this interview with Craig and you want more on a regular basis, please go to ejinsider.com/interviews and you'll find all the details about my new club, which you can join now. Thanks again for listening. My name is Yaro Starak, and I hope to see you in the EJ Insider program. Bye-bye.